Hi everyone, welcome back to Steam Flow. Today we're testing Silent Hill F on the Steam Deck, the long-awaited next entry in the series set in 1960s Japan with a fresh story, new characters and a heavy psychological horror focus. Quick shout out, the channel is partnered with Instant Gaming and right now you can pick the game up with a 38% discount. I'll have an affiliate link in the description. If you use that link, you're going to be supporting the channel directly. Thank you and let's move on. From the start, this feels very different from older Silent Hill titles. It leans into exploration, slow tension and deliberate pacing. Combat exists, but it's more one-on-one and methodical rather than action-heavy. Early on, you're mostly running, hiding and surviving encounters that feel more about dread than spectacle. The setting is dense, claustrophobic and maze-like. Small towns, tight streets, interiors full of unsettling details. That traditional Silent Hill oppressive atmosphere is definitely here, but with a Japanese cultural spin, it feels very fresh. In terms of performance, the game offers 3 presets: performance, balance and quality. Plus, you can fully customize settings like shadows, textures, post-processing, lumen lighting. You also have upscalers like TSR and FSR. Now, initially when I launched the game, I set it to TSR set to balance. This is the default upscaler for Unreal Engine 5 titles, but the game dipped under 25 FPS very often. It does look a little bit better in terms of textures. There isn't a ghosting effect using it, but it's definitely not the preferred way to play it. I then switched to FSR and I think that's the better option. FPS jumped into the 40 to 50 range in lighter scenes, with some dips closer to 30 during combat or chase sections. There is some fuzziness and shimmering, especially on grass and hands, and there is a ghosting effect around your character, but it is overall smoother than TSR and it's what I would prefer to use. I have a short comparison between TSR and FSR and you can see the difference in FPS is just too much to ignore. So from here on out, I will be playing at FSR set to balance, and this is what I would recommend for you to play as well. Now, initially I set everything to the absolute lowest. However, I think there are some settings that we need to turn up and we need to chase a 30 FPS number instead of 40 or 45 because the game looks drastically different with some of these settings turned up. For example, the iconic Silent Hill fog. It looks very different when you have lumen set to high, or the rose petals and other textures will look very different if you don't have reflection turned on. So even though you can technically play it at 40 or even 45 FPS with everything set to low, I would actually recommend settling for 30 FPS and bumping some of the visuals up. So all of that being said, here are my best recommended settings for this game. First of all, set the FPS to 30 and do it from the in-game menu. There is a difference when you do it from the in-game compared to the Steam Deck limiter. The Steam Deck limiter will give you a more consistent frame time, but you will notice a little bit of an input delay. Controls start to feel a little bit floaty. If you do it from the in-game, the game is still snappy in terms of controls, but the frame time will jump up a little bit. For upscaler, I've set FSR set to balanced. Lumen set that to high. Turning it off just completely kills the fog, so we have to use it. Reflections, set that to screen space reflections. Textures, I've set that to medium to try and reduce texture streaming issues. In the beginning, textures were loading very slow. Shadows, post-processing and shaders, I've set those to low, and visual effects plus view distance, I've set these to medium, and motion blur is off. With that setup, the game is definitely playable at 30 FPS, it's visually atmospheric, and it holds 3 hours of battery life on the OLED. However, you are going to encounter some stuttering and some drops to 28 or 29 FPS. Now, I also tried Lossless Scaling. When you play the game uncapped with these settings, it will push towards 60 FPS, but it introduces a lot of input lag and it's gonna have some distortion around lines or text. Like for example here where we have this texture for the door, you can definitely see what happens to lines when you turn on lossless scaling. So this is something that you may be able to notice. Now the game isn't really that fast paced unless you're being chased or doing some sort of quick action scene, but you can notice this. In terms of input lag, it's definitely noticeable. It's not one of the best experiences I've had with lossless scaling, so I would prefer to turn that off and play with 30 FPS instead. Now on to battery life and thermals. On the OLED Steam Deck, you can expect around 2 hours and 30 minutes of battery life uncapped with these settings, and closer to 3 hours or 3 hours and 15 minutes if you lock the game to 30 FPS. On the LCD, that will be around an hour and 30 minutes, maybe 2 hours max if you lock it to 30 FPS. And in terms of thermals, before I locked it to 30 FPS, I was looking at around 78, 79 degrees Celsius on the GPU, which was very high. Fan noise was also very high. I think the deck ran at 80 to 85% fan speed in the beginning. But once you cap it to 30 FPS, you can lose about 10 degrees of the thermals. I settled around 60, 65, 68, something like that. The fan definitely slowed down. So capping it to 30 FPS is, I think, the right choice. It will be very comfortable in terms of thermals and in terms of noise on the Steam Deck. Now onto controls in UI. Controls feel perfect and snappy even at 30 FPS. Combat doesn't demand twitch reactions, which makes 30 FPS viable. You still have to dodge and parry, but it's no issue at all at 30 FPS. I think it becomes an issue only if you use lossless scaling. The control setup is pretty basic. You do have 3 controller presets, but there's no custom mapping. It seems there is custom mapping for keyboard and mouse, but not for controller. Another interesting thing is that you can actually swap between PlayStation and Xbox button icons. That's not something I've seen in other games, so that's pretty interesting. You can also adjust camera sensitivity, inversion, and there's also a vibration toggle included. There are some accessibility options. The game has 3 colorblind filters with adjustable intensity. You can also adjust subtitle size and font options, and of course multiple languages. I think text is pretty legible and the UI scales fine on the Steam Deck. However, the game is marked as playable, and one of the reasons is that some in-game text is small and maybe difficult to read. That's what the official store page says. I personally didn't find any issues with that. So in conclusion, can you play Silent Hill F on the Steam Deck? Yeah, absolutely. You are going to need to tweak some settings, but you can definitely play this comfortably at 30 FPS. That's gonna be it for this video. If you guys found it helpful, don't forget to leave a like to support the channel, subscribe for more Steam Deck content, and also check out my Steam Curator page where I post recommendations for all the games I test and whether you can run them on the Steam Deck or not. Link will be in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.